Hi, I'm Colin and welcome to How to Paint Watercolors. So if you're ready, we'll get started and we'll paint this one. Hello and welcome back to Painting Watercolours with me, Colin. I've just stretched the paper. This is a £140 100 Newton watercolour paper, and I've just stretched the paper, wetting it both sides, and I've just dried off the bottom third. I'm just making sure we have enough water on it. And then we're going to take some raw sienna. It's going to be sort of an evening picture this, but we're not going to do a garish or a very strong coloured picture with all oranges and yellows in it. We're just going to keep it relatively dull. It's just one of the, almost like a tonal thing. Quick run round of the colours. We've got raw sienna, French ultramarine, burnt umber, raw umber, alizarin crimson, and a little bit of warm sepia. Not many colours in this. Some water in here, and I'm going to take some very weak French ultramarine. Big brush. I really want this weak. Maybe almost so you can't see it, because I'll be adding no colour into it. And I'm just going to add a little bit more raw sienna into them hills. French ultramarine, alizarin crimson. Take it just a little bit stronger than that. Some burnt umber. These are Sennelier paints. The burnt umber for me is almost like a chocolate colour, but it comes in handy sometimes. And let's just flood some clouds things in. So that's an earthy evening violet. Just bringing some shapes, leaving some of the other colour to show through. And like I've said before, this is just a suggested colour palette. You really can use your own. Mix up some more to make this quite strong. I'm putting this in while it's all really wet. Remember, this is going to dry quite a lot lighter, around about 15 to 20%. Just might take some clean water and just drop it in around the edges here and just let it push the paint around. It'll do its own thing, creating some nice cloudy effects. Giving you a lot of interest. Take a little tiny mop brush, take the excess moisture off. I'm going to weaken this down a bit. Take basically all the paint off it, and I'm going to get a hit and miss effect that I want. Very much a dry brush into the water area. Same thing with the earthy purple. And then we're going to leave that to dry naturally. Now that your skies are nice and dry, I want to say dry. It's still damp slightly, it's just that the paint is fixed and shouldn't move when we do the next stage. So I'm just adding a little bit of water to that. I'm going to mix up a little bit more paint, taking what we used in the sky, Prince Ultramarine, Alizarin Crimson, maybe a touch of raw umber in it this time, just to change it slightly. And I'm looking for, yeah, that looks okay. And I don't want this to be too strong. And I'm just following where I've put the water in on the top. I'm going to allow this to drift through the water. Helping the flow of land just by putting a few brush strokes in it. I'm going to allow this just to fizzle down through that. While it's still very wet, so I'm just going to put some darker shadowing in on some of it. But you'll hardly notice, but it will register on the eye. Just gives a little bit of extra interest to your background without taking too much away from everything else. Then round on the front, I want to take some of the excess water and paint off, just to lighten it, just at the tip where the sun's shining through. And I want to take some straightforward French Ultramarine and just add it to this boat here. And just leaving a little sliver on that end where the boat is coming round the other side, just to get one or two things in. While we're here, take some of this, just add a little bit of darker colour to it, just to give it some shape. Just to make it so it's not all one flat wash, it just gives it a little bit of interest. And then while we have to wait for this to dry before we can move on to this section, otherwise it will bleed into the hills, we have to let that dry. I've just blacked in with just a mixture of French Ultramarine and sepia the boat, and I've just wiped out with a damp brush the centre just to give it a little, so it doesn't look flat. Re-wet this hill here, this little embankment, and I'm just going to drop some raw umber in, just in places, and some raw sienna, a little bit stronger because I want it to be a little bit forward, and just pull it up the hill embankment. And I want to take some of this colour, move it into here, just to make it quite dark, quite thick. I do want it stronger. Then just allow this to flood down. Just darkening one or two areas. Pulling one or two bits of stringy land out. Darken it in this corner so it doesn't pull your eye out of the picture. I'm going to take a mop brush, some of the same colour. There's some trees and bushes in here. I want to put these in, relatively simple. Strengthen this up once again to a nice dark, almost a black. Put a couple of trees in. Once again with the mop brush. Think of the shape that you want. And we can add one or two darker patches in, up where it would throw a shadow. shoreline. Just take some raw sienna and just stroke this in across where the mud flats are. I'm using a mop brush for this. I want a broken edge at some point. Just helps to strengthen the foreground up. Then we're going to let that dry. Now that's dry, we can strengthen the water up. So I'm going to add some more blue. I'm going to make another earthy violet again like we did before. This one's a little stronger. I'm going to take a little burnt umber just to flatten it. Taking a mop brush again, just on the tips. I just want to bring it across, leaving a hit and miss. Same on here. A little bit of a darker shadow on this side. Leaving some of the raw sienna to show through. Just darkening it up as we come forward. Forgive my arm. Just do it with quick strokes. Just bring a little around the boat. Then I do want to take some of that colour and add it to here and just darken it slightly. A bit more blue just to send it down. Leaving some of the other colour to show through. Take some of the umber, just put it on the brush, just create these mud flats with it. Just leaving it with feathered edges. Add some to this, taking some of the last of the raw sienna into this. I'm going to make a murky dark colour, some of the warm sepia, French ultramarine. I'm going to darken these mud flats a little bit. I'm using a mop brush for this, but you can use a normal number 8. Just bringing it into the water, keeping them almost flat because I want to give the impression of shallow flats. Maybe the odd one out here. Trying to keep them straight. Don't want to cover up all the paint that I've put on. I should give the general impression. We're slowly running out of paint. I just want to drizzle some in. Bringing it into the water. Add a little sail to this. I just put the mast in with a watercolor pencil. There's a filled up sail. Make it a little bit more dark. Just pulling up one or two bits and pieces of, you can get some of that growth in these marshes that you wouldn't think would survive, but it does. and then we're going to let this totally dry. Now that's dry, I'm just taking some white paint straight from the tube. This is titanium white paint from Mission Gold, really good covering paint, and we can just add a few strokes in just to create some ripples. You can scratch them out, but I really don't want to this time. I've added a little bit to the sea, just cleaning the brush. This is where you get to sign it, put a mount around it and frame it. I'll leave some suggestions at the end of the video for some other videos I've made for YouTube, and you can view them if you want to. So until next time, thank you very much for watching.